Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our live virtual trademark event with the Society of Professional Women. I'm Nicole Stevenson, Director of the SPW program at the Mainline Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin today, I'd like to take a minute to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to be here. This program would not be possible without the continued support of the members of our community and most of all our sponsors. Your involvement keeps SPW and the Mainline Chamber strong. Please allow me to share my screen and thank all of the sponsors that continue to support our mission to accelerate the advancement and expand the influence of women leaders of all professions and generations, strengthen our business community, and support the region's nonprofit organizations. And as always, we ask for patience during the technology.
Guys, I'm Jen Ryan, so I am Jen from Jen and Bill in the Morning here on Philly's B101.1, and B101 is so happy to be a sponsor of the Society for Professional Women, and we want to welcome you to today's event, which could not happen without our sponsors. So I'd like to take a minute right now to thank them. The champion sponsor, Wells Fargo. Communication sponsor, Comcast Business. Employee benefit sponsor, USI Affinity, My Benefit Advisor. Bank.
Okay, yay, virtual applause, right? So thank you so much. I'd also like to thank additional event sponsors that stepped up to support today's program, and they are Camelot Auction House, Lincoln Financial Group, Nolan Painting, and the Carney Group. Please support these businesses whenever possible. At the Mainline Chamber of Commerce, we are focused on connecting our members with business, leadership development, and talent. It is vital to the strength and recovery of our region, and we are responding to current affairs on multiple fronts. We encourage you to visit mlcc.org to view our many resources that are available and for updates on information and events. Our next SPW event will be on Thursday, October 15th with the principal of an Intentional Life LLC, Autumn Nestler, on how to transform your midlife and reinvent what's next with a toolbox of strategies for professional women. We encourage anyone interested to register at spwmainline.com. You can continue to help us serve you by communicating with the Mainline Chamber of Commerce staff, taking our surveys, and also by interacting with us on social media using our hashtags, #MLCC and #SPWMainline. Thank you again for your support. Before introducing today's esteemed guests, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. There is a chat and Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. Please remember to submit your questions in the Q&A function as to not be lost in the chat function for when it becomes time to get to them. Ashley will answer questions for about 10 minutes after her presentation today. In order to continue our efforts to connect individuals with one another through networking during today's program, we will be sending an attendee list from today to all attendees and sponsors with information on how you can identify up to 2 individuals that you would like to have a 15-minute conversation with. And we will attempt to put you in touch with at least 1 or 2 of your choices. You will also receive a recording of the event today, which will also be available on spwmainline.com. In addition, we're going to be hosting breakout sessions today after Ashley's presentation and Q&A. There will be a moderator in each room to direct the conversation, and each attendee will have the opportunity to introduce themselves and their company. The moderator will then lead the discussion with a proposed question from today's program to engage the dialogue between the group of individuals. Thank you all for volunteering. The link for the meeting rooms will be provided in the chat function now and at the end of the formal program today. Please save the link to the meeting room now so that you can access it easily. We will wait a few minutes for everyone to join the breakout session, so you will be in a holding room, so please be patient with us. I will begin the meeting all together before actually splitting everyone into their groups. We are navigating this new feature of our program, and I'd like to thank my colleague Stacy Reimel for helping to facilitate that. As most of you know, giving back to the nonprofit community is a big part of the SPW mission. Today, we'd like to highlight the Calliope Joy Foundation. Here with us to share more about this incredible organization is Adrienne Domino, Senior Talent Acquisition Lead from Gold Sponsor UGI Corporation.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining today. Wanted to just briefly tell you a little bit about UGI. We have been around for 134 plus years. We are a Fortune 500 global energy company located in King of Prussia. Some of our business units you might have heard of, as we are the parent company to them, is AmeriGas Propane, UGI Utilities, UGI Energy Services, and UGI International, as we're located in 17 different countries. Now I would like to talk to you a little bit more about the foundation. So in 2012, founders Maria Kafalas and Pat Carr's daughter, Calliope Cal Joy Carr, was diagnosed with the late infantile onset metachromatic leukodystrophy, MLD, at the age of 2. In 2013, Cal's brother, PJ, had the idea to sell cupcakes to raise money for his sister's fatal disease. That's how the Calliope Joy Foundation was born. The foundation's mission is to help support children living with leukodystrophy through improved care, research, and family support. Leukodystrophies are a group of genetic disorders that negatively affect the development of the brain's white matter, or myelin. There are more than 50 forms of the disease, including MLD, and 1 in 7,000 births are affected. Since 2013, the foundation has sold more than 45,000 cupcakes and raised more than 800,000 through various events and fundraisers like Cal's Cupcake Challenge, the Cupcake Gala, the Cupcake Run, and through generous gifts from partners and donors. Maria and Pat couldn't save Cal from her disease, but the discovery of cutting-edge new gene therapies has since made saving thousands of children from the disorder possible. These therapies replace missing and malfunctioning genes with new ones, completely reversing the effects of the child's leukodystrophy. The foundation helped establish the nation's first leukodystrophy center of excellence at the world-renowned Children's Hospital, Philadelphia. The center is one of the few in the nation that brings together a multidisciplinary group of caregivers to provide revolutionary diagnostic testing, clinical care, and the most advanced treatment to infants and children with leukodystrophies. This fall, instead of the Cupcake Challenge, the foundation is aiming to raise $40,000 to aid CHOP's COVID fund to support families with leukodystrophy. Those interested in donating are encouraged to visit our website at thecalliopejoyfoundation.org. Thank you so much for your time to highlight this important cause.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. Sorry, I was trying to get back to my script. So now I would like to welcome and thank Ashley Fox for your flexibility while working with me to bring an engaging presentation to our audience. We are very appreciative of your time and attention, and we look forward to learning more from you shortly. At SPW, we are proud to partner with so many companies that live our mission and our vision, and our gold sponsor, Valley Forge Casino Resort, is one of those partners. Although we aren't able to be at their fantastic location for today's event, it's my pleasure to introduce Senior Sales Manager Penny Blumenthal to provide updates and to introduce our speaker today. Welcome, Penny. You have to unmute.
I'm unmuting. Hi, everyone.
There you go.
So I am very honored to be representing the entire staff of Valley Forge Casino Resort today and welcoming you to this virtual networking event for SPW. We are very proud to be longstanding sponsors of such a great organization as SPW, one that emphasizes women empowerment. Although Zoom is a great way to connect for now, we really miss, as I'm sure you all do, being able to see all of you in person, and hope the next event we host, we will be able to be here in one of our fabulous ballrooms. We did reopen at the end of June, and although we are limited right now to only hosting meetings of 25 or less, we are working very hard to ensure once it is safe to have large meetings in person and networking events, you will feel safe and secure here at Valley Forge Casino Resort. If you're interested in more information on our Boyd Clean policy, please visit the Boyd Gaming website. And now I am super excited to be introducing our speaker today. Ashley Fox is an award-winning sports journalist, analyst, NFL reporter, and columnist. She has covered the NFL for ESPN, Sports Illustrated, and spent 11 years at the Philadelphia Inquirer, where she not only covered the NFL, but the Philadelphia Eagles, my very favorite, and the Philadelphia 76ers. She has covered the Summer Olympics, Wimbledon, the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, the Final Four, the World Series, the Stanley Cup Finals, and the PGA Championship. Ashley has been featured on SportsCenter, Outside the Lines, The Sports Reporters, Pardon the Interruption, NFL Live, NFL Insiders, His and Hers, and Jim Rom is Burning. She has appeared on CNN and MSNBC. Ashley was also the selector for the 2018 Miss Teen USA pageant. She co-authored the series The Deciders. She is an expert on success, communication, teamwork, and something dear to all of us, the power of relationships. Please join me in welcoming to the virtual experience award-winning sports journalist and analyst, Ashley Fox.
Wow, Penny, that was awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You forgot to mention that I'm a friend of yours. So thank you. That was really quite beautiful. And thank you, Nicole, for having me. I've been so impressed by the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a relatively new member myself. And I've had this event on my calendar for, I don't know, Nicole, what has it been, like 10 months? And I was so hoping we were going to be able to do this in person so I could meet so many of you in person. But, you know, 2020 happened, so here we are. And I look forward, hopefully, in the near future to seeing all of you soon. Secondly, I want to thank SPW for honoring the Calliope Joy Foundation. It's a organization near and dear to my heart. If you've ever driven around and seen the Cal's Cupcake Challenge signs in people's yards, it's an event that's at Kenwood Elementary School. And my dear friend Maria Kafalis, she's an amazing person herself. She's a professor of sociology at St. Joe's. She's the mother of 3 kids, including a terminally ill 10-year-old. And her husband, Pat, just died 4 months ago. So this honor for her, it means a lot. So thank you so much. There are usually 4 things that I talk about when I do presentations, and I call them lessons from the sidelines, the things that I've learned that I think have made me successful in a highly competitive and male-dominated profession. And number one is you have to believe in the impossible in order for it to become possible. My impossible was covering professional sports at a time when there were very few women who were doing so. Number two, you have to work really hard to build, nurture, and maintain relationships. And the maintaining part often is the hardest part. And as we know, relationships determine results. Number three, you have to operate with integrity, because who you know will open the door for you, but then it's how you do what you do. And number four is you have to listen. I'm in the communications business, and I think what people miss about communicating is that it's not just talking, but it's listening. But this being 2020, instead of a deep dive on those four things, given all that's going on and all that we've all been through these last 6.5 months, I think it's really vitally important to talk about resilience. Now, as Penny mentioned, I spent a quarter of a century covering sports and some of the greatest athletes of all time, which basically makes me just old. But I've had the great pleasure of working at ESPN and Sports Illustrated and the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I did get to go to the 2004 Summer Olympics. I've been to 12 Super Bowls. I've covered the NBA Finals and Wimbledon, one of my favorite events ever. And I love high-performing athletes for a variety of reasons. They are freaks of nature physically, sprinters being the biggest. They're regimented, disciplined, highly competitive individuals who a lot of times are willing to sacrifice their own personal goals for the greater good of the team. But the best of the best that I've ever encountered, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, Tom Brady, Brian Dawkins of the Eagles, they're able to recover faster from adversity and return to their championship form. The best of the best have a never-ending reservoir of resilience. But what about the rest of us, right? What about, how do we muster the mental and physical fortitude that to overcome adversity when things happen? How do we show resilience? One of the most amazing stories that I've witnessed in sports is what's happened to a guy named Alex Smith over the last 15 months. Smith is a quarterback, and in November of 2018, he was starting his 166th career game. He was playing for Washington against the Houston Texans, and he suffered a compound fracture of his leg. He broke his tibia and his fibula, and he was rushed to the hospital. After a couple of days, the doctors had performed surgery, and he had metal rods put in his leg. But after a couple of days, he developed a flesh-eating bacteria that started ravaging his leg. And doctors told his wife, Elizabeth, said, first we're going to try to save his life, then we're going to try to save his leg, and anything else after that will be a miracle. Alex was hospitalized 4 different times and had 17 surgeries. And while his prognosis was still in doubt, he told his wife that everything would be okay. And she was floored. And he said to her, he said, don't you know how many people would want to change places with us? Don't you know the life that we have and the blessings that we have? We can't take that for granted, not even for a second. We have to have perspective. Perspective, perseverance, and resilience. 2 weeks ago, with a rebuilt leg that included a new muscle that they'd transplanted, Smith was cleared to practice with the Washington Redskins. He was cleared for contact. He returned to the practice field. Remarkably, he made it back. I've never seen anything like it. Life is full of challenges, some big, some small, some personal, some professional. Life, as I say, is a contact sport. How we react and cope and persevere, how we show resilience will come to define who we are, how we're judged, and ultimately how we're remembered. And I should know. A couple of years ago, I hit the trifecta of adversity during a 22-month span. First of all, I got divorced rather unexpectedly. Then, as I just had started recovering from that, very unexpectedly, I got laid off from my dream job at ESPN through no fault of my own. Because I was still under contract for the next 10 months, I was contractually prohibited from covering the NFL. Otherwise, I would forfeit my salary, which I had no intention of doing. So I was sidelined for an NFL season for the first time in 15 years. It just so happened that that was the season that Philadelphia Eagles made the Super Bowl for just the third time in franchise history. I'd been to their second one in Jacksonville. And I know everyone at the organization, from the owner of the team to the janitor of the practice facility. The Friday before the game, I was feeling really sorry for myself. I was missing being part of the action. I had so many friends who were in Minneapolis for the game. And I was dreading the day after the game because that was the day that my contract was expiring and my salary was disappearing. About 5 o'clock, my brother called me, and our father had been hospitalized in North Carolina for a couple of weeks with pneumonia. And the doctors had cleared it up, but our dad was still needing a ridiculous amount of oxygen to breathe. And my brother had just gotten the word that our dad had a terminal lung disease that no one knew about, and he was dying at 75. And my brother said, "You've got to get down here. We have to tell him together." So the next morning, I flew to North Carolina and we told our dad the news. And he had had several strokes previously, which had forced him to retire and move into an assisted living facility. And his life had taken a pretty dramatic turn for the worst. And he was tired and he didn't want to live hooked up to machines, even if it meant he could squeeze another 6 months out of life. So on Sunday, we imported a big screen TV and we watched the Super Bowl with our dad in the hospital room. And it was amazing, obviously. 3 days later, our dad moved to hospice. And that Thursday morning, we watched the parade through downtown Philly in his hospice room. We had lunch, and then he took his oxygen off. And a couple hours later, he took his last breath, and it was horrible. I'd really been struggling personally and professionally at that point, and that was just the capper. And it was so sad, as any of you know. But the next night, around midnight, my phone buzzed, and it was a text message from Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles. And I'd known Jeffrey since 2003 professionally, and he said in a text, "I just wanted you to know I heard about your dad, and I'm so sorry. And I'm thinking of you. And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. Big hugs, Jeffrey." Sorry, I got a little emotional talking about that. He had just won the world championship that had eluded him for decades. And he had just led a parade in front of 2 million people in Philadelphia. And it was amazing. But somehow Jeffrey Lurie had heard about my dad, and he took the time to send me a note. And he didn't mention the Super Bowl or the parade. He just mentioned me and my dad. That was his priority. And his success is not a surprise because he leads with humanity, and he too is resilient. About 6 weeks later, I was home by myself, and it all just kind of came crashing down on me. And I sat on the floor in my kitchen. I started crying, and I just looked up and was like, "Please ease up on me. I've shown you that I'm strong. I've shown you that I can get through anything, but I need a break. Please ease up on me." And slowly but surely, things started to get better. And I wanted to share with you firsthand what I learned about resiliency. So maybe if you're going through something, COVID or whatever, it will help you. Number one, I owned my pain. I grieved. I cried. There were days where I struggled to get out of bed. I couldn't eat for months and months. And I woke up in the middle of the night, night after night after night. And there were some mornings when I woke up and I was just like, I can't go through this again. And I allowed myself that time. Number two, I tried to have a sense of humor about everything that was happening. It was really tough sometimes, but there was a morning where I was laying in bed and I was watching a psychologist talk on a morning show about triggers of depression. And she said, depression can be triggered by loss of a loved one or loss of a marriage or loss of a job. And I was like, well, what about if you have all three at the same time? What are you allowed to feel then? And I laughed. Number three, I exercised a lot. I trained for my black belt in karate. I worked out with a personal trainer. I ran the hills of West Conshohocken. I took kickboxing and I pushed myself physically 12 times a week. I learned how to break boards with my feet and with my hands, and it quite literally saved my life. Number four, I started listing my goals every day. Big ones, small ones, long range ones, short-term ones, even teeny tiny ones like take a shower or pick up the kids from school. And I started checking off my accomplishments and giving myself credit for them. Number five, this might sound silly, but I downloaded this cool app called I Am, and it sends you affirmations throughout the day, like I am full of self-confidence, or I am worthy of love. And when they pop in, I repeat them and I just think about them for a couple seconds. And it helped retrain my brain from thoughts like I'm a loser for getting laid off, or I'm broken from getting divorced. And it's really helped. I Am. You can look it up. Number six, and probably the most important thing, is I picked the one thing I wanted most out of life, and I focused really hard on getting it. A lifelong friend of mine is a life coach, and she called me after I lost my job, and she said, Ashley, you're going to have to find happiness in the smallest of things now. You got so much satisfaction out of your job, out of going on national television, out of talking to important sports figures. You're going to have to find satisfaction in cooking dinner. And it stuck with me. And I decided that the thing I wanted most of all, and it sounds really simple, but it wasn't, I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to be happy. And so I worked on that every day, worked on being happy, like an athlete like Alex Smith, rehabbed from an injury. And I was satisfied with an inch of progress or a mile. And I coined a phrase, move the damn ball. And I did every day. I started my career as a speaker. I started writing a book. I'm working on a documentary that's taking me to Croatia and Bosnia in a couple weeks. And I'm about to launch a podcast. We're all living through these uncertain times with this pandemic. And believe me, I understand that too. 2 weeks ago, after months and months and months of wearing a mask and being super careful and not going anywhere, I was diagnosed with COVID. And it really floored me. I'm fine, but I just broke quarantine yesterday after 14 days without my kids, and it was not very fun. But I'm resilient, and I'm sure you are too. And I've come to believe that great success can come from great adversity if you stay true to your core beliefs. Believe in the impossible, build, nurture, and maintain relationships, have integrity, listen, and most importantly, be resilient. We are going to get through this. Stay true to the good and positive, and remind yourself over and over and over again, I am resilient, because you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. That's awesome. We really appreciate your time, like I said earlier, your knowledge, your expertise, and thank you for sharing such personal stories with everyone. I know that's not always easy. So I'm going to ask everyone if you'd like to submit a question for Ashley. We have maybe a few minutes. We're almost at 12:30 already, so I do want to get into the breakout rooms to allow people some time to discuss and share their own stories of resiliency with one another. Does anyone have any particular questions for Ashley? I'm going to give them a few minutes in the Q&A box. Oh, it looks like Lauren actually has her hand raised, and I know her, so we're not scared. I'm going to allow you to talk, Lauren, since you raised your hand. Oh, where'd it go? She did have her hand raised. Maybe she hit that button by accident, or maybe she's going to go to Q&A instead. So I have one in the box, so we'll go with that. And if you do want to raise your hand to actually talk and ask a question, I can let you talk. So go ahead and do that. So this was great. You mentioned Wimbledon. Have you ever had a chance to meet or interview Nadal? Am I saying that right?
Rafael Nadal.
Yes, I guess
no,
that's what that person's asking.
I did not, but he's like one of my favorite players ever. No, the last Wimbledon I went to was 2003. And I've been twice, and then I've been to the US Open a bunch of times, but I never had a chance to. But he's amazing.
Okay, and then I have another. How do you recommend you build resilience professionally?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. The biggest thing that I learned, I mean, I learned that you have to have a really thick skin. And I was in, obviously, a job that was, you know, I dealt with the public a lot. But when I worked at the Inquirer, they used to publish my email address at the bottom of the stories that I would write. And I would have people email me all the time. And sometimes it was criticism of my opinion. Oftentimes it said stuff like, what do you know? You're a girl covering sports. You need to get back into the kitchen. At one point, they criticized me for not switching my name after I got married. Like, and so what I did was I just had learned kind of to suck it up and to be tough and to work through, like, not let outside noise, you know, influence who I believed I was myself and the strengths that I had. And so that was probably one way, but good Lord, we could have a whole webinar on how to do that too.
What is your favorite interview to date and why?
My favorite interview to date. Well, probably my favorite athlete to interview. And look, I was at the Allen Iverson practice press conference. I asked the question, not the practice question, but the follow-up to that. I was in Terrell Owens' driveway when he was, you know, lifting weights in 2005, I think. My favorite athlete of all time to interview has always been Brian Dawkins, because he's so insightful, so thoughtful, so giving of his time. And he was always so willing to talk about the struggles that he went through also. But the Eagles have been very fortunate to have a ton of really amazing humans roll through that organization, you know, from Andy Reid and Doug Peterson to Donovan McNabb, you know, and the whole host of guys now.
Brian Dawkins is
Doc.
That's my only jersey that I have from the Eagles. So still, like, I refuse to buy another one. He's just such a class act. You're right. That's awesome.
Totally.
Another question here. How do you build resilience in a team, especially during challenging or disruptive times?
How do you build resiliency? Well, you know, Andy Reid, in my opinion, is the best example of a leader of a team that I've ever come across. And the things that he does, he hires people to work for him, and then he gives them a very clear definition of what their role is, whether it's a position coach, a coordinator, even a player. And he puts people in position to succeed, and then he lets them do their job. He's not a micromanager. He empowers his people to be the best that they can be. And I think, you know, I mean, we saw that here in his 14 years in Philly. They didn't get it done with the Super Bowl, but they had a ton of success. And then you see it in, I mean, he just won in Kansas City, right? And the outpouring of love that he got from not only, you know, Chiefs fans, but now here also and around the NFL. It's because people respect him because of the job that he's done and the way that he's a leader. And I think that, you know, they also operate very strongly on, you know, next to man up. You have to prepare. You have to almost expect that adversity is going to happen, because inevitably it will, and you have to be ready. And you have to be ready as a team so that you can get through it. And I think he's masterful at that.
Okay, this is going to be our last question so that we can get time in the breakout rooms with one another to do our networking. Have you ever covered the WNBA, and how do you see the future of women's professional teams in sports?
I have not ever covered the WNBA. My first event in Philadelphia was the Women's Final Four in 2000, which is when I moved here. But I think it's been really remarkable to watch what's been happening over the last couple of weeks with the WNBA and the NBA. And they've been at the forefront of speaking out on, you know, the social injustice that's been going on. And the WNBA in particular, you know, they have a platform of their own. And I think, you know, the future hopefully will be one day that, you know, their salaries go up, that the U.S. women's national soccer team salaries will match the men. I mean, we're still talking about the same kind of issues that we have been, but they've got the WNBA in particular, they've got a new executive director and they've got awesome leadership. And I think you're going to continue to see that league in particular grow.
We have some good ones too in the Q&A. Maybe I'll throw in one or two more if you don't mind, Ashley.
No.
Were you yourself involved in sports growing up, and what led you to a sports career? And then the other question, and this is definitely going to be the last, have you ever not been taken seriously in the sports world considering your gender? So those were the last two.
Okay, so my dad was a college basketball coach when I was a kid. I grew up in North Carolina, and he coached at Duke, Wake Forest, and Davidson. He was head coach at Duke for 1 year before Mike Krzyzewski. And then after he got out of coaching, he started his own sports promotions and marketing business in North Carolina. And so any college basketball player that came through the ACC during the 80s and 90s came through my house. So I grew up around guys like Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, James Worthy, Christian Laettner, like just really big, iconic athletes at the time. And I decided when I was in high school that I wanted to be a sports writer, which horrified my dad because he hated sports writers because of his experience as a coach. So yeah, that's how, and I was an athlete myself. I was a tennis player. I have an older brother who, you know, taught me how to throw a baseball and throw a spiral. And I was a jock myself. So it just seemed like a natural fit. And then,
Gender discrimination.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I have heard that my whole life. I mean, I got out of college in 1993 and went directly to Sports Illustrated, and then hopped around a little bit and ended up in Philly in 2000 and then at ESPN. And it's, you know, there weren't very many of us when I started. And I've, you know, I heard everything. I heard you got your job because you're a woman, but you don't know anything because you're a woman. And, you know, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. And my favorite story, and I'll share this, I covered the Sixers in Philly for like 3 years. And then I got pregnant with my firstborn, my daughter. And I couldn't cover the NBA anymore because it was too grueling. There were 82 games a year and 41 on the road, and a lot of nights and early mornings and stuff. And so my boss put me on the Eagles beat. So I was an Eagles writer. And so one of my first days in the Eagles locker room, and it was during training camp, and there were like 90 guys in there, and it's not the prettiest place to be, and it's a big room. And I just kind of perched myself over on one side of the room while I was waiting for whoever it was that I was waiting to interview come. And at the time, I was standing right near where the defensive backs lockers are and the quarterbacks lockers. So Doc was there, Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor, Donovan McNabb was on the other side, AJ Feely. And I was just minding my own business. I didn't know anybody. I was just minding my own business. And this group of offensive linemen came walking in. And this rookie took a look at me and he said, I bet you can't, what was it? I bet you love seeing all these swinging dee, dee, dee in here, don't you? And I was like, oh. So I looked at him, and as loudly as I could, I said, if I wanted to see swinging doot, 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 I would still be covering the 76ers.
Nice.
And everyone started laughing, McNabb and the guys, and Troy Vincent walked up, and he walked up to me and to the rookie, and he said to the rookie, he said, look, we don't operate like that here. She has every right to be in here as anybody else. You apologize to her. And then he turned to me and he said, hi, I'm Troy Vincent. And I was like, wow, okay. And we've been, friends ever since. So that's one of my favorite stories for what it's worth. But yes, there's been gender discrimination. Yeah.
I'm glad we asked because that's a really funny story. And obviously kudos to Troy Vincent because that's a great testament to his character. And we'll end on a good note by saying that it's important that men speak up when they see